Yes, we decided to present firstly the main principle of certification, meaning the basic concepts, the basic definition, in order to have them in mind for the next presentation about what the EUTR is saying about certification, in order to be more able to understand what are the terms and definition that the EUTR is using about certification. So first of all, let's back to the definition. What does that mean? What is a certification in general? It's what you have to understand. It is a mechanism for attesting, meaning to certify, to attest after a verification that something like a product or service is done accordingly to specific requirements. For forest certification, it is quite the same idea. It's a voluntary process is done by independent party to assess the quality of the forest management and the timber production traceability against some requirements which are compelling in some standards. And these requirements are defined by some public or private organization, certification organization. So on the basis of this definition, we can identify 4 main principles about how the certification works. First of all, this is the concept of third-party audit, meaning there is a body which are doing an independent evaluation of companies or an organization, meaning that this body do not have any links or interests with the company it will evaluate. And this third-party audit has to be done according to some specified protocol, meaning some procedure, which describe how the audits should be done. The second basis is the third-party audit has to be done with some qualified auditors, meaning the people who are going on field or in the company to evaluate the requirements should be competent in the field they are auditing, meaning we are not going to send a nuclear specialist inside for an audit for forest management. The auditor should be able to understand what is auditing, how the process is functioning, the main concept and the issues of the sector is auditing. And of course, these auditors have to be impartial and independent from the companies is auditing. The third base is the standard. All certification schemes need to develop a standard, which is a document which should be public, that meaning that everybody may know the requirements that the certified companies comply with. And the last thing, that the certification should be voluntary, meaning that the company asks to be certified. It should not be something which is compulsory by other bodies or regulation. There is some case where certification is compulsory inside a legal framework of some countries. This is a case, for example, in Gabon, but this is very exceptional. What a certification scheme contains? Mainly, we can find in certification scheme, whether forest or general certification scheme, we can find a standard describing the requirements, some additional documents, the description of the certification process with a different type of audits, information and requirements about labeling, communication, transparency, and an accreditation mechanism which can be not used by all certification schemes, and we will see about that just after. Concerning the standards, the official definition of a standard given by ISO, it should be a document which should be established by a consensus with different stakeholders, recognized and approved by the a certification, a recognized body like the certification scheme owners, and which provide for common and repeated use rules, guidelines, or characteristics for an activities or their results, aimed at the achievement of the optimum degree of order in a given context. The standard is the main documents which show the set of requirements that a company or an organization must comply to be certified. These standards may be applying to different specific situations, scope, entities. For example, in forest certification, we will see there is standards for forest management, there is standards for chain of custody, but there is also standards for multiple site groups and so on. And with these standards, usually a certification scheme develops other type of documents like guidelines, interpretation guides, policy, in order to complete the requirements, to explain them, to adapt them to specific situation or particular cases. All this documentation are the basis to evaluate a companies to be certified. What are the different actors in a certification scheme and in a certification process? First of all, there is a scheme owner, which could also be named as the normative bodies, meaning this is a body which develops the set of rules, meaning it develops its own standards about a specific thematic, and is usually the owner of the certification scheme. He will develop the rules about certification, how should be done the audits, what should be, what are the requirements, and all other documents we have seen just before. Here is some example of certification scheme owner. The FSC is a scheme owner, as well as PEFC, as well as ISO. They are developing their own scheme and standard. The second level, as previously said, it could be not optional, but not applying in all certification scheme. This is the accreditation steps, meaning that some certification scheme required that the certification body have to be accredited, meaning evaluated for the competency, ability to make audits, to implement the rules that the certification scheme has developed. And the accreditation body, their purpose is to evaluate the certification body and to evaluate them as a first step, but also as annual, on the basis of annual audits. In some certification scheme, there is, for example, one accreditation body for all certification body which want to be accredited. This is the case for FSC. FSC chose one accreditation body, which is ASI, to accredit all the certification bodies wanted to audit against FSC schemes. In PEFC, it is mainly based on national accreditation bodies like COFRAC, ENAC, UKAS, and so on, which are national accreditation bodies in different European countries. So it's depending from one country to another. One specificity, as I said, some certification schemes do not have the accreditation step. This is the case of the legal forest certification, legality forest certification, because these certifications have been developed by certification bodies themselves, meaning that the scheme owner and the certification body is the same entity. It could be seen as a weak, but these bodies, these certification bodies, which are developing and implementing legality forest certification, have kind of legitimacy to do it because they are all accredited for sustainable forest management schemes, and they are applying the same kind of procedures, the same kind of process and requirements. So even there is no accreditation step, they are competent to perform such a certification process. Next step, certification bodies. This is the body which is evaluated and accredited in order to evaluate the companies who want to be certified against all the rules defined by the scheme owner. So the purpose of, or the role of a certification body is to define an organization and some procedure to fulfill to the set of rules of the scheme on the certification scheme, and to audit and audit and certify company, meaning this is the body which is in charge to issue the certificate and to decide if the company may be certified or not. And the certification body also is in charge to train, manage, and monitor the auditors. Auditors who can be internal or subcontracted, but they are still under the responsibility of the certification body and always monitoring during the period they are working for the certification body. So the certification body, you know them. There is some example of some of them, which are the most commonly known in the forest sector. And at the last level, of course, the certificate holder, meaning the company or the organization, asking to be certified. Though they are in charge to define procedure internally in order to fulfill to the requirements of the certification standards. They have to welcome the audit and the auditors and to be transparent when the auditor are making their audit. And they are the ones who receive the certificates and can use the labels and product and communicate on the certification process. A few words about what is certified in forest certification scheme. In general certification, usually there is system certification, meaning we are evaluating a system, the way of the process is functioning. And there is product certification, meaning certifying the quality of a product. And there is no mixed except in forest certification, where we are in the middle of these two approach, meaning that in forest certification scheme, we are auditing a system. We are auditing the forest management. We are auditing the traceability of the wood in the supply chain. So we are auditing kind of process, but the communication and labeling is done on the product themselves in order to recognize a wood product coming from a certified forest. So the forest certification have a kind of specificity about that. Another basis of the content of the certification scheme, it's rules about labeling and communication transparency. In forest certification, there is the use of labeling on products to identify the product coming from certified forests, and to also know about the claim of the product status, meaning if it is a product which is 100% certified or mixed certified or coming from controlled source, we will see that after. And there is also information about what should be the communication around the certification schemes, what are the public data, the public reports, the public information which can be released to the public, the use of the logo, the links with stakeholder and the participation in stakeholder in the process. So each certification scheme have its own rules about how to communicate and to publish information. So we have seen that when a system is developed, there is about the standards. The standard can be specific to one certification scheme to another certification schemes, and the rules applying to certification bodies as well. Meaning that who can be an auditor or a CB, a certification body, how should be monitoring, what are the different type of audits, what happened during an audit, what should be the consequence and the management of the non-conformity, the duration, the graduation, and so on. How the decision making is defined, because some certification scheme may define a decision making very differently, sometimes with a committee, sometimes with an expert group. So there is different way to decide who should be certified or not based on the basis of the audit report and so on. And there is also different specificity in this different certification scheme, like what is the level of transparency. Some certification scheme provide more information about how the audit has organized, the result of the audit, the certificate data, and so on. The level of stakeholder engagements, where in the process the stakeholder can be engaged. Is it during the standard elaboration, during the audit itself, before and after the audit? What are the appeals and complaints mechanisms? Do there exist some procedure to avoid impartiality or conflict of interest, and so on? So all certification schemes have their own vision and requirements about all this issue. And a few words about the certification process. What are the different stages to be certified? First of all, we are starting with a contract, meaning the company want to be certified has to sign a contract with the certification bodies of its choice. It may choose the certification body he wants, but the certification body should be accredited, of course, or qualified for that. The pre-audit could be optional to upgrade the level of conformity. Then there is the initial audit with prior stakeholder consultation in the case of forest management certification. Depending on the result of the initial audit, there is a certification decision. Maybe the certification could be negative because there is some non-conformity to address before being certified. So the company has to define some corrective action, which should be evaluating during an additional audit. And then it comes back to the certification decision. If the certification is okay, the certificate is issued for a duration of 5 years, usually in the forest certification schemes. And after the certificate issuance, there is annual audits, meaning one audit per year during the 5 years of the forest certification cycle. And after the 5 years, there is a new cycle starting with a new main audit, which name is renewable audit. Renewable audit, which is kind of like an initial audit. And we're starting again with another 5-year cycle with annual audit. And at each audit, there is a certification decision in order to issue, to maintain, to suspend the certificate according to the conclusion of the audit. So this is a kind of summary of the difference we can find across the different certification schemes. We have seen some of them during this speech, but this is important to understand that even if there is some main basic principles in certification scheme, whether forest certification scheme or general forest general certification scheme like ISO or so on, each certification scheme has some specificity. Could be in the requirements, could be in the rules of auditing, could be in the coverage, the scopes, etc. So even if there is a main basis, it's important to understand what are the difference between them. Thank you very much, and I let Chloe to continue with the next presentation.